Welcome to Untested Gaming. It's that time of year again where a YouTuber with a decent following in the TTRPG space has a pretty bad take, and the Pathfinder 2e content creators respond in our typical kindly manner. And I post a video really late in the day, mostly because I'm still at work when all the drama goes down. This time, that job experience will actually pay off a bit. For those of you who don't know, I've worked for several years now as a broker and analyst, providing services to some extremely large banks and hedge funds. Can't really go further into detail than that, but suffice to say, my client list includes quite a few household names. So when a RPG YouTuber starts talking about market share and acquisitions, my ears perk up a bit. If you haven't seen Dungeon Craft's most recent video, they go a bit into why they feel Pathfinder 2e to be, in quote, in trouble, and why they think Wizards could be seeking to purchase Paizo, or at least Pathfinder, in the near future. And I just want to offer my perspective as both a Pathfinder content creator and a financial professional. And to be better safe than sorry, I have to put a disclaimer that my views are my own. They should not be taken as personal financial advice, and that I'm acting in no way or capacity as an agent for my current employer nor any previous employers. The short answer to the question, though, is no. Pathfinder is not in trouble by any stretch of the word, and no, Wizards will likely not be purchasing Paizo in the foreseeable future. Dungeon Craft has two main points that I want to discuss specifically, that of Paizo's shrinking market share and their humble bundle promotions. And we'll see that both of these arguments have some pretty large misconceptions baked into them. Dungeon Craft cites Roll20's player populations and a CNBC article talking about Wizards of the Coast 2020 revenue as their main sources for showing the shrinking market share of Pathfinder in the TTRPG space. Look, no one is arguing that D&D isn't the largest contender in the market, but it's neither helpful nor transparent to talk about a market percentage when the market as a whole is growing, and growing at a ridiculous pace. Yes, there's a time when Pathfinder outsold D&D 4th edition, but that was 4th edition, and Pathfinder was the new hotness. Flash forward to D&D 5e and ask anybody on release, no one was predicting the paradigm shift that would take place in a few short years. With the mainstream success of Stranger Things and YouTube becoming the de facto home of professionally produced nerd content like Critical Role, acting as sort of black swan events attracting millions of fresh new eyes to Dungeons & Dragons like never before. Of course, anyone introduced to tabletop RPGs in this way would gravitate towards D&D 5e, due in no small part to the relative newness of the system and brand name they already recognized. So of course, as the proverbial pie increases in size, the percentage of games with more humble growth is going to look smaller in comparison. Looking at company-wide revenue likely isn't going to give a full picture. Not only does this completely ignore that Wizards of the Coast's actual flagship product is Magic the Gathering, which has also seen soaring sales in recent years, but also fails to acknowledge that revenue is only part of the equation. It's not as if Wizards can use that 800 million or whatever and go to Paizo and say, we'll give you 3 times what you made last year in exchange for Pathfinder. Wizards also has bills to pay, and those slick animated ads for their new Magic sets and D&D video games aren't exactly cheap. What's more likely is that Wizards use their D&D dollars to fund their other long-term projects, like Magic Spellslingers, that Magic Arena mobile port, and Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance, their shiny new ARPG. Things that, if successful, will likely add a good deal more revenue to their books than trying to sell 2 competing TTRPGs. Now, if you're more maliciously minded and think Wizards might try to buy Paizo and simply shelve Pathfinder and move those developers over to D&D, remember, this is a tabletop game we're talking about here. It's not some MMO where you can only play the game as long as the company keeps the lights on. If Pathfinder 2 suddenly left the shelves, people who want to play will just simply get the rules secondhand and play it. It doesn't guarantee a conversion to D&D 5e. The fact that there are still people playing 3.5 and Pathfinder 1st edition are testament to that. And using Roll20 as the barometer to monitor market dominance is a bit nebulous as well. That would be like looking at tournament attendance for Warhammer 40k to determine the overall health of the wargaming community. Sure, Roll20 is a big name in the VRT space, but other places that are a bit friendlier to Pathfinder specifically exist, with Foundry being the preferred choice for PF2 in my circles. A more accurate look would probably be gathered by looking at population data for D&D Beyond and comparing it to sites like Archives of Nethys and applications like Path Builder. The fact of the matter is that there's probably still a lot more D&D and Pathfinder being played and talked about in person, in subreddits, in Discords, and in Facebook groups. Completely casual and functionally untrackable. And that will probably only become more true as we get further away from 2020 and people look to get their social lives back on track. And let's touch on something that Dungeon Craft left out of their argument, the nature of competition. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons is the literal dragon, and Pathfinder has to lead Call of Cthulhu and Vampire in a party to defeat the biggest game in town. The TTRPG landscape, like any ecosystem, has different synergies and strategies that each company can use to carve their own niche. Obviously, we can't know an exact number here, but as a thought experiment, how many people do you think who started playing D&D because of Stranger Things are playing Call of Cthulhu now because they want that dark and eldritch tone from their favorite TV show? Probably more than a handful. It's the same thing for Pathfinder 2. Not only are players still transitioning from Pathfinder 1 to 2, but there are also large swaths of 5e players looking for something a little different, but still in the fantasy space. Paizo has always been the community-focused publisher. That's why they're still at every convention talking to players, while Wizards spends their money making another slick commercial. Now for this humble bundle situation. It's not about charity or exposure or whatever. This has been Paizo's MO since the very beginning. It boils down to this. D&D sells you rules, Pathfinder sells you adventures. One of the biggest complaints I hear from the 5e crowd is that mechanics that should be core to the game keep being released in supplemental books. If you want those shiny new custom lineage rules, guess you better buy Tasha's. Want to run a ship combat encounter? Pick up Ghosts of Saltmarsh Adventure. Interested in Hexploration? Tomb of Annihilation is yet another $50 adventure to put on your shelf. Paizo, on the other hand, puts their open game license where their mouth is and gives us the rules for every ancestry, feat, system, and item for free on Archives of Nethys. Sure, there are new feats, items, and monsters that are unique to the adventure paths, but the full rules for them will be immediately available on Archives of Nethys as soon as the PDFs are available. The real meat of Pathfinder is in the adventure paths and campaign books. $5, $10, $15 for an in-depth adventure that lasts half a dozen sessions or more, and they release practically monthly. And that's what Pathfinder 1 did as well. Everyone already had 3.5 rules, so Paizo continues to release adventures and content using an almost identical rule set. This isn't some untested strategy. So remember, next time someone starts talking to you about TTRPG revenue and market share, just remember that Wizards wants you to buy expensive books. Paizo wants you to play a great game.